Hey, this is Notser, and we're talking American aircraft carrier changes in more depth, but also I'm going to give a lot of theories on both private conversation, but also where I think aircraft carriers need to go to really solidify their place in World of Warships and to make the game better. The game in the background is the Hindenburg, and it's a fantastic game. I hope you enjoy it. So let's get to the American aircraft carriers. So the basic idea of the American aircraft carrier changes is as follows. They are going to be dropping all of their loadouts. They're going to be having one loadout that is universally more effective. It's going to be versatile. That's the word they were using. We want the loadout to be more versatile. Bogue's dropping all of them, and it's getting a 1-1-1. That's just a straight up better build than any of the loadouts I had. 1-1-0, 2-0-1, 0-1-2. You had anti-aircraft, you had anti-ground, and then you had a mediocre loadout to choose from. You didn't really have a good choice for the Americans, and that was the core issue. That's why they have a lower win rate than the Japanese. The Japanese are very versatile with their loadouts. They have loadouts that are just better, and you could swap it just slightly to adjust for more fighters or a little bit more torpedoes or a little bit more dive bomber. You always have that choice, and that's nice. They don't feel very mediocre side grades of each other. So the Bogue's getting a 1-1-1. Great. The Independence is getting that same 1-1-1, or keeping the 1-1-1 that it has right now, and it's getting an upgrade in its dive bombers. Now that's okay, but dive bombers are still really RNG. I mean, you roll a die on if you hit the target. You roll a die if you set the target on fire. And you roll a die if the number of bombs hit the target, right? There's so much RNG associated with that. So this is not going to address that at all. But the progression in power is more consistent. It is a better loadout than the Tier 5. Obviously with dive bombers that will probably do more damage and more fire chance. And probably be faster too. The Ranger is dropping all its loadouts, and it's going for a 1-1-2. Right now it has a 1-1-1, a 2-0-2, a 0-1-3. So getting rid of that mediocrity, more anti-air, anti-ground, and anti-bad, or just there's just no upgrade there. They're giving you just a straight versatile upgraded loadout that is just going to be useful. In the Lexington, you get that 1-1-2, but you have the option to choose AP. AP's been lukewarm at best. It's good for very specific targets, and it's very bad for everything else. That's not going to change with these American aircraft carrier adjustments. It needs to, though. We need to get to a state where this is an actual choice that is useful in more scenarios. And I'm confident that Wargaming definitely recognizes the issues. Whether you agree or not is irrelevant, because they're going to exist whether you think that they're competent enough to make their game. I'm just saying. For the Essex, the 2-1-1 is getting dropped. The 3-0-2 is getting dropped. The 1-1-3 is getting dropped. So for the Essex, it's a little bit better, right? The Essex has a fighter in every build. It has a torpedo in pretty much every build, and has a dive bomber in every build. So it is not weak on the versatility front. However, the new build that they're getting, a 2-1-2, better fighter, pretty much comparable dive bomber, and it's keeping the torpedo. So it's just a better build than the baseline, and obviously the side grades that you can choose from. It's going to be giving up the ability to upgrade the aircraft, though. The aircraft are going to remain, I believe those are the Tier 8 aircraft, with an F4U1 and a Grumman. I think those are the Tier 8. So its aircraft are probably going to take a little bit more damage, except for the dive bombers. The dive bombers are still going to be able to be upgraded to Tier 9, and also the option to load AP. Okay, so even with this versatile build, they still want you to feel like dive bombers are your identity. I get that. And then finally, For the Midway, it's the Essex with 1 extra torpedo bomber, and that is pretty awesome. However, this torpedo bomber system is going to be tier 8s. You can't upgrade them. We see this sort of on the Enterprise, and it isn't as bad as you would initially think. It's just really important that you do your attack and you do it cleanly. The lower the tier compared to the AA protection, the quicker it gets wiped out. The fighters and the dive bombers, though, they will get their upgrades just as before. And it's definitely better to give the Midway this 222. Absolutely. It used to have a 222, which were tier 10s and jets, and it was completely broken. No one liked fighting it. It could easily win every game, get 6 or 7 kills, and have 3,000 base XP. No problem. We don't want that, obviously. And we're not going back to it. Now, this single loadout is interesting. I think it will be the norm. I think that Wargaming will like it. I think everyone will like it, and it will encourage them to implement the change to the Japanese as well. Because of this, they will be allowed to balance the aircraft loadouts much, much closer, knowing that there's only one valid loadout, literally one loadout available. For the Americans right now, you could get a full anti-air or a full anti-ship, and it sucks to have to predict that. You can't predict that. A veteran's knowledge of the game is just as valid as a new player when considering an American aircraft carrier as an opposition. They're just all side grades. Some of them are better than others at certain situations, but not one is superior. Not like the Japanese, where the Japanese pretty much have 1 or 2 builds that are just better. But I could even still see them dialing down to 1 loadout. This 1 loadout will allow them to focus on the Japanese being the best at torpedoes, the Americans being the best at dive bombers, the British being the best at fighter protection, maybe some other aircraft carrier line in the future having a slightly different loadout setup with torpedo focus or dive bomb. You can see the potential that this allows them, and it's much healthier for the game. My knowledge of the game is much more relevant when I know that this is the loadout that the Midway has. It's a 222. When I see or don't see these squadrons, I know that they're hidden off somewhere. You could theoretically hide your build until it's too late with the varied loadouts that exist right now for the Americans. And that's not fun for the veteran player because he can't apply his knowledge. It's not really fun for the new player because he can't learn from the game. The next game might be completely different. So moving towards a more predictable strategy to employ against aircraft carriers is healthy for the game. Beyond that, AA is too overbearing, or it's way too weak. Aircraft carriers, if they're top tier, can ignore AA. If they're bottom tier, it doesn't matter. Everything will be shot down. It's too much on a knife's edge. And Wargaming knows it. They've told me. They play the game. Don't be ridiculous. Don't suggest that game developers aren't playing their games. Now, do they have the same skill level as some of their players? Absolutely not. But that's not relevant to whether the game is fun or not. And I think we can all agree it's not fun, no matter how good or bad you are, to be in an aircraft carrier and feel helpless or completely broken in your power level. So, single loadout per aircraft carrier. They're going to clean up some of the commander skills, take away some of that power that you can increase your AA protection. I bet you that defensive fire is going to be the core skill that they use to balance the AA game. These are ships that they deem successful against the incoming attack, and anyone who doesn't have defensive fire up or on the ship is going to be susceptible to aircraft. It's not going to be a scenario where you can just will yourself by overbuffing your ship and manipulating the division where you load in with an aircraft carrier. That's just going to be gone, and the game's going to be healthier for it. So relying on defensive fire and the player's knowledge to use it, relying on your teammates being around players who have defensive fire and use it, that is going to be your way of combating the aircraft carrier menace. And I think it'll work out better. You won't have this scenario where you're basically feast or famine. The aircraft carrier will have the ability to contribute in every game, and it won't be completely dominant when it's top tier. It will be just as relevant as any other ship. It'll be exciting to have all 4 ship types more prevalent in every single match. Unfortunately, the population dropped so low that the resources required to fix the issue probably were better allocated towards the destroyer or the cruiser or the battleship. More of the game's population would notice that change. And that's just what happens. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. But they know the issue exists, they want to fix it, hopefully they will, and then that will bring back the population, and the game will be much healthier for it. The aircraft carrier is too important to ship combat to completely make it irrelevant. I want it back. I want to consider that play in every single game. It's enjoyable to play against and play for when it all comes together. It works great to encourage team play and the coordinated fleet movement. It's just really fun, and it's cool. And I hope this was interesting. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you next time.